Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar, COVID-19 Research Opportunities for Faculty. We're very excited that we had over 300 registrants for this event, and I know that this is an extremely important topic for everyone who's listening. My name is Dan Seatman, and I am on the staff of Research Foundation CUNY's Office of Award Pre-Proposal Support, otherwise known as APPS. The APPS office is excited to bring you today's presentation, produced in partnership with the CUNY Office of Research. Joining me today are Ingrid Valentin and John Zapogis from the APPS office, and Martin Lee from the Technology Commercialization Office at CUNY Research. We'd also like to thank Tamara Schneider, Effie McLaughlin, and Ron Nerio for their support, also from the CUNY Office of Research. The health, social, political, and economic traumas caused by this pandemic have been unprecedented, and arguably no higher education community has been more impacted by the coronavirus than the City University system. After weathering the pandemic in America's first epicenter, CUNY is now uniquely positioned to play a pivotal role in research efforts to overcome the virus and its long-term damage to our society. Many public, private, and nonprofit funders are addressing this threat by providing significant research grants in a variety of disciplinary areas. Of course, we can't give an overview of every funding opportunity related to the pandemic in the short time we have today. So we have chosen to focus on select opportunities in health, STEM, and social science areas that we think are most salient for CUNY's talented research community. External sponsors clearly see the academic sector as vital for producing the discoveries and knowledge required to mitigate and finally defeat the COVID-19 pandemic. We encourage all CUNY researchers to ask what role they can play in providing these breakthroughs. We hope you find our presentation informative and useful. But before we start, just some quick housekeeping and an overview of the agenda. Throughout the presentation, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Your microphones will be muted. If you have questions about the presentation content, please save them for the conclusion of the session and type them into the question box on your webinar control panel. My colleagues and I will answer them verbally once we arrive at the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have other questions or concerns, feel free to type them in the chat box and direct them to the presenter's attention. You will see two handouts available to you in the webinar control panel. One handout is today's slide deck, so feel free to save this for future use. The second one is a listing of COVID-19 research opportunities for faculty that the APPS office has been posting and updating on the RF CUNY website. Some of these opportunities will be discussed today, but others should be explored individually, and this is a document you should definitely take a close look at once the webinar has concluded. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, and the video will be distributed to both attendees and those who couldn't make it sometime early next week. So please don't worry if you think you missed something of value. Let's turn now to today's agenda. So momentarily, I'm going to introduce my colleague Ingrid Valentin, and she is going to talk about the different research development support tools that are available to you as CUNY faculty. And then she is going to provide a brief overview of what the research funding landscape looks like based on the recently passed U.S. CARES Act legislation. Then she'll turn it over to my colleague John Zapogis, and John will provide an overview of the federal agencies that are supplying sizable amounts of COVID-19 funding, and he'll go in a deep dive speaking about the NSF and the NIH and a few other opportunities that you should be most aware of and pursuing. John will then turn his attention to discussing opportunities for COVID-19 funding that come from the private, philanthropic, and international NGO sectors. Then John will turn it over to my colleague in the CUNY Office of Research, Martin Lee, And Martin will discuss the COVID-19 funding opportunities from the perspective of inventions and product development and entrepreneurship, of which there are many. And then I'm going to provide some parting thoughts, just to provide you with some action items and some takeaways that you can pursue after this webinar is over. And then we will launch into the Q&A section. And now, without further ado, I am going to turn things over to my colleague Ingrid, who will speak a bit about the APPS office and the programs available to support faculty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are happy to see so many of the community join us today. I would like to briefly tell you about the award pre-proposal support APPS office. APPS was established in December of 2015 to support the university's mission in advancing its sponsored programs enterprise. It was tasked with designing CUNY-wide tools and programs that would add value to pre-award activities and ultimately build and expand the university's research, education, and institutional development program capacity. APPS is dedicated to faculty proposal development and encourages collaborative university-wide effort. The office primarily focuses on resources and support to the CUNY community to identify possible funding agencies, guide them through the complexities of those funding agencies, and provides the tools necessary to write and package competitive grant proposals. APPS services include individual meetings with faculty, researchers, and grad students. We develop seminars on grant design, targeted forums on strategic themes or trends in funding, and general workshops such as grant writing. APPS provides an online proposal peer review program, which helps to assess the quality of grant proposals by identifying both weaknesses and strengths, as well as providing suggestions for improvement before submission to an external funder. The system now allows to all types of sponsors to be evaluated. The office maintains searchable databases of external grant opportunity, such as Pivot and Grant Forward. Every single member of the community can access these databases, whether from the office, home, or anywhere in the world, as long as you're using your CUNY email address to do so, to log in. You also have access to the faculty travel for grant development, an internal funding program jointly sponsored by RF-CUNY and CUNY. The program financially supports CUNY researchers pursuing new grant proposals that require out-of-town travel in order to further grant development. The program is currently not available in order to discourage travel at this time, and it will be up and running when it makes sense to do so. If you would like to learn more about our resources, and we hope you do, please visit rfcuny.org, Principal Investigators, and then view Explore Pre-Award Resources page. Thank you, Dan. Or simply send us an email at apps@rfcuny.org. We would love to hear from you. I would like to move on to the next topic. U.S. CARES Act and supplemental funding for research. As you probably know, Congress has passed the CARES Act, which provides COVID-19 funding to federal agencies, such as NSF, NIH, DOE, NIST, and NASA. They have received additional funds to allocate specifically to their COVID-19 related platforms. This additional funding does not preclude agencies from providing support from their ongoing programs and redirect it to COVID-19. The dollars identified on the slide are allocations over and above their current annual funding. I'll now pass the baton to John Sapogas. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Before I begin the deep dive into providing you with information on federal support for research, specifically related to COVID-19 guidance, let me just say a few things to faculty across CUNY I've been working with over this the last few months. This has been a tumultuous time for all of us at CUNY. Very rapidly evolving nature of the public health situation requires that we work closely with each other. We're trying to keep up by, as Dan mentioned, by keeping our website up to date. The situation, of course, is fluid and subject to change at any time. And we're working closely with the CUNY Office of Research, which we're partnering with on this effort, and will continue to do so in the future on COVID-19, as well as a lot of other efforts. I'm deeply appreciative to Tamara Schneider for kind of taking us under her wing and working closely with us to make sure everything happens in a coordinated and a unified way. In terms of Research Foundation guidance for COVID-19, our website does, we've listed specific guidance to website on our website related to research for CUNY, biomedical, health science, social science, PIs. We've also listed guidance to arts and culture, PIs on COVID-19 issues. We even have something in there for libraries and CUNY libraries and museums as well. The CARES Act provides funding for research, and we're focusing most of our discussion here on research, but it also provides funding for relief to certain populations and institutions that are adversely affected. CARES relief for students, for example, that is included in there from the U.S. Department of Education. That effort is being led by the Office of Budget and Finance. FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Relief for CUNY, which is being handled with CUNY and through the state, is being handled through the CUNY Office of Budget and Finance. So when we look at federal agencies, okay, with major COVID-19 funding, clearly the ones that stand out are the ones that we've always had a remarkable success with in terms of our research, NIH and NSF. And with respect to NIH, since March 1st, there have been about 191 awards made by NIH, amounting to 231 million. NSF has made 260 awards, amounting to 48 million. So clearly, these are the largest supporters. Within NIH, the largest institutes providing support is the Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases, the National Cancer Institute, and the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Biomedical Engineering. In terms of support from NSF, NSF support on COVID-19 pretty much comes from many directorates. Biological Sciences Directorate, the Engineering Directorate, and the Computer Sciences Directorate stand out. It's important to note that all NSF directorates are funding research on COVID-19. The virus's reach is felt across all segments of society, and accordingly, all disciplines are affected. So this is true for NSF and NIH. Congress specifically allocated more funding for the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases than any other institute. But for NSF, Congress did not specify an area of research, but mandated an increase in COVID-19 research across NSF. So how does one obtain funding from NIH for COVID-19 related research? Well, there are several mechanisms in place to do this. You must have an active NIH award in place to be eligible for COVID-19 funding. NIH actually has made it easy for you, if you have an award, to pivot your existing research and obtain a supplement to that award. For example, if you have an NIH grant on antiviral drugs to treat malaria or HIV/AIDS, and you want to refocus it to study its effect on COVID-19, NIH would be very amenable to pivoting that research so that you can address the important research needed during this pandemic. And I should say that the fastest way to get funding from NIH is by using the Emergency and Urgent Competitive Grants Program. And if you want to activate this mechanism, there needs to be a presidentially declared disaster and public health emergency, which has already been done since March. NIH is operating under that mandate. I'd like to give you some examples that NIH has supported on COVID-19 related research. One is entitled Genetic and Ecological Determinants of Coronavirus Recombination. Columbia University received that award. Again, it's from NIAID, National Institutes for Allergies and Infectious Diseases, for $500,000. There's another one from Baylor College of Medicine, developing a safe and effective RBD-based vaccine against MERS, from Baylor College of Medicine. Human monoclonal antibodies for prophylaxis and therapy against the new coronavirus, Rockefeller University, $400,000. MERS coronavirus cell entry pathways and their relevance to virulence and antiviral strategies, University of Iowa. So these are, I just wanted to give you a few examples of some of these projects. And I have to say again, NIH has received the largest increase of any federal agency on COVID-19 related research. Last time I was observing NIH's budget, it was $34 billion. And with these supplements and with the additional funding, its budget is already up to $40 billion, which is a $6 billion increase this year. So if you have any kind of research that is fundable by NIH, this is a good time to start thinking about it. Let's move on to the National Science Foundation now, an agency that I know well. NSF has really 4 mechanisms to support COVID-19. It has the first mechanism. I should say that the major difference between NSF and NIH is it appears that NIH is requiring most of the funding is going to individuals who already have NIH grants. NSF does not have this requirement. It's providing funding to all applicants, regardless of whether they have an active grant or not. The first mechanism that NSF that you can use to apply for an NSF grant is the one that they normally use during emergencies, the rapid response mechanism. It allows NSF to review proposals that have severe urgency and that require a quick response on natural or anthropogenic disasters and similar unanticipated events. Proposals in response to recently declared Dear Colleague letter may also be submitted to NSF. The engineering director has issued a Dear Colleague letter that is specific to the Small Business Innovation Research STTR grants as well. Third, NSF encourages the research community to respond through existing funding opportunities that are part of the standard disciplinary focus programs throughout the NSF directorates, either by submitting a new proposal or to one of the disciplinary programs. But you can also request a supplement to an existing award. And this is the fourth mechanism that could be used. You can do this because you want to refocus your research by adding a COVID-19 thrust to your research, or because you want to add funding to your grant to accommodate changes that have occurred to your grant due to COVID-19. For example, convert student research experiences to virtual research experiences. So the fastest way to obtain COVID-19 funding from NSF is, of course, through RAPID. But there are a few rules that you need to follow to apply for a RAPID grant. First, you must contact the NSF program officer to obtain feedback. This is a requirement. And once you obtain feedback from them, a yes or a no, then that will determine whether you get a chance to submit your proposal. Theoretically, you can submit the proposal anyway without obtaining this feedback, but I am sure that it will be returned back to you requesting that feedback be obtained. Your project description on your rapid grant request must be brief. It shouldn't be more than 5 pages and not exceed $200,000 and be up to 1 year in duration. Rapid proposals are not evaluated by external reviewers. This is what makes them so attractive, not only to the applicants, but also to the NSF program officers, and they can turn them around fairly quickly within a few months. They're usually reserved for research that's primarily focused on preliminary data collection efforts to address a scientific area of urgency, like this pandemic. It's been extensively used in previous crises. The Caribbean oil spill, for example, Valdez oil spill, the Fukushima nuclear accident. These are just examples of periods when there's extensive funding NSF is providing to the research community. Now, with respect to your write-up to the NSF program officer, here's some general guidelines on what you should do in submitting your initial COVID-19 write-up to them. It should be no longer than 2 pages. They're receiving thousands of these. They just want to hear a summary, pretty much, of what you're planning on doing. And that summary should indicate in there that you are advancing basic research on COVID-19 issues. It should focus on processes and actions that address the global pandemic. It should explain why the research is of an urgent nature. You should describe methods that you will use in conducting the research, provide a timeline. You should develop a budget, but do not exceed $200,000. And also you should describe openly all methods, measures, and data that you will share with other researchers and the public. This should be done all in 2 pages, submitted to the program officer, and ask for their ideas on whether you should submit a full proposal or not. Okay, let me give you some examples of what NSF has been funding with respect to COVID-19 lately. The first one, entitled A Lung Mucus Strategy for COVID-19 Viral Protection. If anybody said to you that NSF does not fund health research, here's an example of where it does fund health research. This is research that is examining vulnerability to COVID-19 that arises from multiple health risk factors, but 2 are particularly prominent in this proposal: the lack of antibodies to the novel coronavirus and the structural properties of lung mucus. The research is focused on the interplay between those 2 factors. A second example is designing an educational intervention to address intuitive misconceptions about COVID-19. There are a lot of misconceptions, and this research is focused on how to address what is the proper way of educating the public, educating everybody about the truth about COVID-19 from a scientifically based perspective, the latest scientific data on COVID-19. The third one is using popular media to educate youth about the biology of viruses and the current COVID-19 pandemic. Very similar to the previous one, except this one is focused on young people. The fourth one is compounding human and natural disasters, implications on agriculture. This is a project mostly focused on a very important sector of the economy and how COVID-19 is impacting that sector. And finally, an engineering proposal that's focused on personal SARS-CoV-2 exposure assessment using a silicon-based organic polymer. So this involves the development of a polymer and the use of a polymer-based wristband and using that polymer to see whether it can be used to assess on a personal level to assess COVID-19, COVID-2 SARS exposure to individuals. So as you can see, NSF, is funding a wide variety of research, ranging from health research directly related to biology, the pathogen itself, all the way to educational research on the biology of viruses in COVID-19. Let's now talk about other federal agencies that are providing support to the scientific community. There are, well, time limitations really, there are so many out there, but time limitations really prevent us from going into depth to any one of these announcements. But I'll say a few words about some of the agencies that are have significant funding. I've really selected them based on the amount of funding that they are providing. First, the DoD, Investigator-Initiated Research Awards, are funding COVID-19 studies that will make important contributions toward research and or patient care in the whole area of COVID-19 and respiratory health. Within HHS, the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, BARDA, which has been in the news lately. This is the agency that was established to aid in securing the nation from chemical, biological, nuclear threats, as well as pandemic influenzas and emerging infectious diseases. So BARDA is accepting proposals in a large number of areas here. For example, diagnostic assay for human coronavirus using existing FDA-cleared platforms, point-of-care diagnostic research for detecting SARS-CoV-2 virus, diagnostic research for detection of the virus, COVID-19 vaccine research, COVID-19 therapeutics research, immunomodulators or therapeutics targeting lung repair, pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis, respiratory protective devices, ventilators, advanced manufacturing technologies related to COVID-19. BARDA is worth a look. It's worth taking a look and taking a deep dive in there if you're interested in receiving some funding from them. The Agriculture Department, U.S. Department of Agriculture, is also supporting research. Its focus is on distance learning and telemedicine. The U.S. Department of Commerce's NIST, National Institute of Science, Standards and Technology, is supporting manufacturing technologies in support of COVID-19 emergency assistance. Department of Homeland Security is supporting commercial products in addressing COVID-19 response. We haven't listed EPA, but EPA has a program to estimate children's soil and dust ingestion rates and to what extent that includes COVID-19. So these are but a few examples of federal agencies that have received significant funding from Congress and have created programs for COVID-19 related research. Let's turn our attention now to some private philanthropic organizations, and actually international organizations too. I've listed some of them here. These are just a few examples. It's a little challenging dealing with these kinds of organizations because although they've listed quite a few announcements on COVID-19, each organization really pursues unique and specific grant-making objectives. There's really no one size that fits all. Some of them require a very short application. Some of them require quite a detailed application. Some of them have one stage to them. Some of them have multiple stages to the competition. So it's very, very complicated. So it's very hard to categorize, to put them in one specific category. The list above, though, is just a few of those institutions that we feel would be of great interest to CUNY faculty. I'd like to, in the next few slides, I'd like to highlight some of them, but I do want to point out two of them. One of them is the U.S.-Israel Binational Science Foundation that has issued a COVID-19 specific focus. The Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia, which is a Brazil-based organization. The Fonds de la Recherche Scientifique, which is based in France. But let's talk about Amazon. Amazon is providing COVID-19 funding as well. Support is being provided to research on developing more accurate diagnostic equipment and tests to identify COVID-19 or infectious pathogens. So they've carved out a little niche here where they want to be of help in providing support to that kind of COVID-19 support. You can see we've laid out what their emphasis is, some of the eligibility requirements, the kind of support, the evaluation factors that determine who receives support. Drug companies have also been funding COVID-19 research. Merck had initiated actually a program prior to the pandemic where it had specifically identified pandemic preparedness, finding new emerging viral infectious diseases as a challenging area of future importance. It was providing support, all along providing support. So it's continuing to do so. It's offering sizable grants. I think the application has to be submitted through their European office. But as you can see that it's focused on next generation machine learning, pandemic preparedness, and fighting the new emerging viral infectious diseases. And in this slide, we list the application process as well. Let me say a few words about the Russell Sage Foundation, and I'm familiar with quite a few faculty at CUNY that do have grants from Russell Sage, especially social science faculty. Russell Sage was founded in 1907 and focuses its efforts on improving social and living conditions in the US. It dedicates itself to strengthening methods, data, and the theoretical core of the social sciences in order to better understand social problems and develop informed responses to those problems. Well, COVID-19 is clearly one of those societal problems at this point in time. If you were thinking of submitting a proposal to that competition, the deadline just closed. However, Russell Sage has stated that it will continue to accept letters of intent in all program areas and special initiatives in their August 5th, 2020 deadline. So if you have a COVID-19 research in a social science disciplinary area, feel free to take advantage of this opportunity. The LOI basically has to satisfy only two criteria: that your research is timely and time sensitive, and that the project has to start before April 1st, and that the research analyzes social, political, economic, or psychological disruptions resulting from the coronavirus that affect social and living conditions in the United States. We have a good relationship with the foundation. They've been a big supporter of CUNY faculty, and I'm sure they will continue to do so during this pandemic. Let's now focus on the Social Science Research Council, which is an independent international nonprofit. It mobilizes necessary knowledge for the public good by supporting scholars worldwide. It generates new research across disciplines and links researchers with policymakers and citizens. There are two programs that social science researchers studying COVID-19 can apply for within SSRC. Both are fellowship programs. One is targeted to the doctoral degree holders, and the other one is focused on doctoral students enrolled in a PhD program. So this slide really identifies eligibility, thematic areas of support, applications that investigate the impact of the pandemic are focused on explorations of policy debates, news, or disinformation circulated via the social media on topics relevant to the 2020 US elections and amplified by circumstances related to COVID-19, such as vote by mail debates, healthcare policy, COVID-19 disinformation campaigns related to the election. And finally, let me say a few words about the Spencer Foundation. The Spencer Foundation is a leading funder of educational research, and since 1971 is actually the only national foundation focused exclusively on supporting educational research. It is looking to fund educational research projects that contribute to understanding the rapid shifts in education during this time of crisis and change. There are two primary categories of projects that they want to fund. One, studies that aim to understand the disruption and the reproduction and deepening of educational inequality caused by the COVID-19 crisis. So they're truly focused on educational inequality and how the COVID-19 crisis may exacerbate that inequality. And secondly, studies that remake and imagine new forms of equitable education. It's clear that the pandemic is affecting all of us in many ways, including the educational sector. How transformational will COVID-19 be? What impact will it have on the sector? Will there be changes in education, in the way we do research? So this slide really provides information on deadlines and eligibility. I just want to say a few words about the arts and humanities because we have not addressed that in this webinar. But clearly, the coronavirus pandemic is really affecting the livelihood not only of individuals who are engaged in science and in the sciences and education and social science, but the humanities, and specifically the arts, are very directly affected. As you know, this has devastated the financial security of many workers, with a particularly acute impact in the New York area. And if you go to the app's website, we have addressed this by providing some specific guidance for the arts and humanities. Emergency grants really providing relief, and also to individuals, and also providing relief to arts businesses and nonprofits. So with that, let me introduce my colleague Martin Lee from the Office of Research, who will discuss innovation-related funding announcements. Thank you.
Thanks, John. This is Martin Lee speaking. I'm with the Technology Commercialization Office for CUNY. Established in 2004 by the Office of Research, TCO receives new technology disclosures and evaluates them for their commercial potential, facilitates the transfer of CUNY intellectual property by nurturing collaboration with industry, develops a protection and marketing strategy with inventors through patent and copyright protection, and supports the formation of startup companies. You can reach out to us at the following email address: info.tco@cuny.edu. If you look on the slide, the right half portion are actually links to what I'm about to discuss. The mission of the New York Academy of Sciences is to drive innovative solutions to society's challenges by advancing scientific research, education, and policy. The challenge: participants will be asked to design a syndromic surveillance network to better understand the current pandemic and/or prevent future coronavirus outbreaks. The 6-week innovation challenge is open to individuals 18 years of age or over. The challenge is a great capacity building opportunity, especially for students pursuing undergraduate, graduate, and postdoctoral degrees. Unfortunately, the challenge began on May 8th. Solutions are due by June 19. The grand prize of $5,000 will be announced in August. Moving on to the next one, rapid acceleration of diagnostics. The National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, NIBIB, is soliciting proposals and can provide up to $500 million across multiple projects to rapidly produce innovative SARS-CoV-2 diagnostics tests that will assist the public's safe return to normal activities. Rapid Acceleration of Diagnostics, RADx, is a fast-track technology development program that leverages the National Institutes of Health Point-of-Care Technology Research Network, POCTRN. RADx will support novel solutions that build the U.S. capacity for SARS-CoV-2 testing up to 100-fold above what is achievable with standard approaches. RADx is structured to deliver innovative testing strategies to the public as soon as late summer 2020 and is an accelerated and comprehensive multi-pronged effort by NIH to make SARS-CoV-2 testing readily available. To address the COVID-19 pandemic as quickly as possible, NIBIB is mobilizing and expanding the focus of POCTRN to encompass both point of care and more traditional laboratory-based approaches. NIBIB will consider innovations at all stages of readiness to circumvent current limitations to SARS-CoV-2 testing capacity, including early stage, transformative innovations based on novel testing strategies that have potential for major scale-up. Advanced stage, modification and optimization of existing SARS-CoV-2 testing approaches, including clinical laboratory tests that can dramatically increase testing capacity. Project proposals will be accepted through the online RADx portal on a rolling basis. Next, the Center for Biology, Stony Brook University location. For 3 decades, the center has served as an important catalyst in the development of new biomedical technologies and emerging companies in New York State. The website is a listing of funding and resource opportunities for companies and innovators from government agencies like the 2 I've just mentioned, and from companies like Pfizer and Mozilla. Next and last, the COVID-19 Investor Coalition is a coalition of active investors and an aggregated pipeline of innovative companies responding to entrepreneurs tackling the enormous challenges presented by COVID-19. Entrepreneurs can apply for funding if your business is contributing to solutions to the COVID-19 crisis in healthcare, economic resiliency, or other social impacts. Investors can apply for funding, investors looking for opportunities to invest in COVID-19 solutions, finding and supporting companies that are working on solutions to the array of enormous challenges presented by the COVID-19 crisis, whether they be in healthcare, economic resiliency, or any impact field. I now pass the baton to Dan. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Martin. To wrap things up, the presenters would just like to offer a few action items for you to consider in the days and weeks ahead as just some takeaways as you proceed with pursuing COVID-19 research funding opportunities. Our first recommendation is to keep an eye on the COVID-19 research opportunity updates that are part of the RF-CUNY apps webpage. These are being continuously monitored, and old opportunities are removed and more recent ones are added. And so this is a great one-stop shop to see what the cutting edge is in terms of COVID-19 research that we think that all CUNY faculty should be aware of and engaged with. The second is to please consult with our team, the app staff, and you can reach us at apps@rfcuny.org, or reach out to your sponsored programs office to workshop proposal ideas. We are here as your sounding board, and we have extensive experience helping to craft faculty ideas into powerful concepts that are persuasive in front of program officers and other decision makers. So please avail yourself of the services that we're delighted to offer all CUNY faculty during this pandemic. Third, stay up to date about the CUNY research continuity and reopening announcements that are always being updated on the CUNY Office of Research webpage. You definitely want to stay abreast of what the status is of labs and other facilities and what the shape of research will look like at CUNY in the weeks and months ahead, especially as we start to plan for what fall 2020 will look like. So please do stay attentive to that resource. Fourth, we strongly encourage you to check out the Council on Government Relations, or COGR, resource page that provides a kind of database on the different federal agency responses to COVID-19. That information includes guidance for both individuals who presently hold grants from different federal agencies, as well as those who are teeing themselves up to submit new proposals to those agencies. It really is a clearinghouse of all of the guidance that the different federal agencies are providing, especially as that guidance becomes more uniform and clear as the pandemic continues. Fifth, we encourage you, please don't wait to hear about COVID-19 funding just on the grapevine. You should be using Pivot and Grant Forward to be actively discovering these grants. We talked about those two resources at the top of the webinar, but I just want to reiterate how powerful these tools can be, and you can choose either one of these tools based on whichever one you feel gives you the best results and you're most comfortable with. Additionally, there's a feature that each has called Saved Search, and once you set up a particular set of search parameters, you can then receive weekly or daily or monthly opportunity updates when new COVID-19 related funding programs are announced. So that's a fantastic way to always stay on top of things. Sixth, stay tuned for upcoming webinars about best practices for using CUNY's funding opportunity databases. Our office recently produced a webinar in collaboration with Grant Forward, and that was about 2 weeks ago, and we're going to be distributing that webinar recording shortly. But then coming up on Thursday, June 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the kind folks over at Pivot are going to be providing a webinar just for CUNY faculty to help them find COVID-19 funding opportunities using Pivot's different feature sets and tools. So the link is right there for you to register, and we strongly encourage you to do so the moment this webinar ends. Seventh, please be sure to grab the handouts available in this webinar session. As I mentioned at the top of the program, one of those handouts is this entire slide deck that you now have available to you. And the second is a index of different COVID-19 funding opportunities broken out by discipline and sponsor type. Many of those opportunities have been spoken about by my colleagues here today, but many others we didn't have time to get to, so we strongly encourage you to familiarize yourself with those resources. And finally, once this webinar ends, on your browser, a webinar assessment survey will pop up, and we would be so appreciative if you would take the time to quickly answer those 3 questions so that we know how we did, how we can improve, and how we can be most responsive to your needs as research active faculty. So at this juncture, I would like to open things up to Q&A. I'm going to be unmuting my colleagues, and what we're going to do is a lot of you posed many different questions in the question box, and thank you for that in advance. And what I'm going to do is read out some of those questions so that you guys know what was asked by your colleagues. And John and Ingrid and Martin and myself will be answering those questions in real time. So the first question is, hi, are we going to have the slides? Yes, the slides are part of the handouts that are available to you. So you have those already. The second is, does CUNY have BCL2 labs to work with COVID-19? John, do you have any idea about whether or not that's the case? Or Martin, do you know?
Sorry, I don't. Go ahead, John.
I'm not sure what the question is. I don't know what BCL2 labs are. Are
Okay.
they video conference labs? I think we need a clarification on what's meant by VCL labs.
Okay.
Is it visualization labs, video conference labs? I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
So,
all right. So the individual who asked that question, if you could reach out to us separately after the webinar, we would be happy to see if we can hunt down that answer for you. Another question, will the recording be available? If yes, where? I will be distributing the recording of the entire webinar early next week, once that's available, and it'll be available to all of the attendees. The next question is, NIAID focuses on protease and polymerase inhibitors and vaccines and antibodies. Is there room for antivirals with other mechanisms of action?
I think NIAID is open to all of those areas, including the antiviral areas as well. It's not limiting its research to a specific group of pathogens or specific drug class to address infectious pathogens. So yes, it is open to all of those, all of the above.
Okay. The next question is asking about the research opportunities dealing with clinically observed cytokine storm and hypoxia, which would interfere with normal adaptive immunity to the virus. Do we know about any opportunities speaking directly to that?
I have no specific program that I can direct you to right now, but clearly leave us your email and we'll be more than happy to accommodate your requests. I know cytokine storms are a big part of the problem with respect to the coronavirus, and I have to believe that the NIAID is attempting to address that problem, but I also believe that the National Institutes of Heart-Lung diseases are also addressing that problem as well. So leave us your email address and we'll get back to you with a specific sources of support.
Okay. The next question is, how do we need to proceed to convert an existing NSF grant? I assume convert it from its normal program or project emphasis and convert it to focus on COVID-19 work.
Well, I mean, that's up to you to decide. You need to evaluate your research and first determine whether you can repurpose it or refocus it to address COVID-19. Clearly, there are some areas where this can happen very easily. For example, if you're doing social science research study and you're looking at how the health disparities by ethnic and racial group, to add a COVID-19 component to it would probably be very wise, or to refocus it mostly on COVID-19 would not be a bad thing to do. So it really does depend on your research and what you're trying to achieve. I think that if your research is astronomy and you're studying your research area is astronomy, I think it would be very hard to try to connect it to COVID-19. but there are clearly lots of areas that you can repurpose your research, convert it to or orient it toward COVID-19
John,
opportunities.
do you have any suggestions for how a PI should go about reaching out to their program officer to request that the grant be reoriented towards COVID-19 research? Or do you have any recommendations for how a PI should request a supplement to work on COVID-19 research if they have an existing NSF grant?
I think that's really your first step in the process, is really to sit down and evaluate your current research, make a recommendation for how you want to convert it into a COVID-19, write a little abstract on how you're going to do it, 2-page abstract, and then send it to your program officer and get their response. They're probably going to be the ones to give you the best advice on how to do this.
Okay, great. The next question is CUNY taking any efforts to expedite the IRB review process for COVID-19 related projects? I'm not sure if John or Martin would have any preliminary ideas.
I haven't heard anything either way. I would suggest them contacting at the email address I gave, info.tco@cuny.edu. And if you have something specific, include that as well. We'll look into it for you. Okay.
So the recommendation is to contact the Office of Research, and they will look deeper into that. The next question is, I'm CUNY faculty and I'm on the board of a nonprofit which recently won a $400,000 NSF grant. We used Manhattan College to administer the grant because one of the co-PIs was Manhattan College faculty. Does CUNY have that capacity, and who would I contact in CUNY about this? I assume this refers to transferring the grant over to CUNY to administer?
You can transfer a grant to another institution. Agencies, federal agencies do not like doing that unless the PI is going to that institution. So if you were a Manhattan College faculty and you were the PI on the grant, and now you've come to CUNY, that should not be a problem. You can contact your program officer and they can arrange the transfer of the grant to CUNY. However, the Manhattan College does need to be involved in the process as well. There needs to be discussions. Most academic institutions have no problems moving the grant with the PI. If the PI is moving, there usually is no problem doing that. So yeah, if you need more guidance on that one, I mean, I've moved many grants when I was an NSF program officer from one institution to another, but it all revolved around the PI moving as well.
Okay. The next item is actually an update from our Vice Chancellor, Tamara Schneider, who is listening, and she confirms that CUNY does have biosafety level 2 labs, but she encourages the individual who asked about those labs to reach out to the Office of Research and they can assist. The next question is, our programs office is working on budgeting. Can I reach out to apps@rfcuny.org to help with the writing of project ideas? Yes, absolutely. We strongly encourage you to get in touch with us, and we can workshop proposal ideas and strategies and different ways of making your proposal concept as competitive as possible.
I should say that your grants officers are usually very good at developing budgets. They're very experienced with developing the budgets. We're probably good when it comes to developing the project summaries and the project descriptions. We could probably give you some good ideas on making them, you know, competitive. But the grants officers are fantastic at helping you build those budgets and making the project description fit very closely with the amount of money that you're requesting for the project.
Okay. The next question is directed to John, and the individual asks, In your NSF Rapid examples, the PDMS wristband example seems like a product that would be funded by an SBIR grant. Does Rapid typically support such applied research?
Well, during this pandemic, there's a lot of there are a lot of things that that happen, and that's an example of one of them. So SBIR normally will NSF normally would not support that research programs will not normally support those kinds of activities. But at a time like this, a lot of rapids are being supported. If they're good ideas, they're being advanced by the program officers. Because remember, all it takes is a couple of program officers reviewing these proposals, and if they feel they're good and they're really adding value and addressing important issues to address the pandemic, they're going to support it.
Okay. The next question is, I'm a math faculty member. Am I able to apply for a grant concerning social science research? And I assume that the individual means social science research related to COVID-19.
Well, you can apply for any grant that you want, regardless of whether you're a math faculty or a social science physics faculty. You can apply for any grant that you want, but it's really not recommended. It's recommended that you, if you have expertise in mathematics, you should be applying for a math grant, a mathematics grant. There's plenty of funding for mathematics as well. However, if you want to team up with a program officer in the social sciences and provide mathematics expertise in the methods that are being developed by his social science grant, that would be very welcoming and viewed as a positive by a review panel.
The next question is, how do I register for the CUNY Pivot webinar on June 11th, 2020? I'll take that quickly. That registration link is actually on the slide that is currently up. And so if you download the slide deck and head over to that particular slide that we're on right now, you can just click that link and you'll be taken directly to the registration page. In addition to that, our office is going to be distributing a specific announcement about registering for the CUNY Pivot webinar as well. And so stay tuned to hear more about that from your sponsored research offices and or research deans. The next question is, are there grant opportunities from NIH for researchers that do not currently have funding through them? John, would you like to take this?
So the question was, are there grants opportunities for researchers that do not currently have funding?
Right. Are there COVID-19 grant opportunities from NIH if a researcher does not currently have an active grant?
Well, you know, what we identified in this presentation are the recent announcements that NIH made with respect to COVID-19, specifically COVID-19 oriented opportunities. You can continue to apply for NIH grants and within the various institutes. NIH is looking very carefully at the applications, COVID-19 related applications, and what it wanted to do is it wanted to provide this funding out to the research community as fast as possible. And the quickest way, of course, to do that would be by submitting, adding additional funding to existing grants. So I can see why NIH developed this course of action with respect to COVID-19. But there isn't anything that prevents you from applying for existing grants and doing a COVID-19 related activity. For example, focusing on viruses. Viruses, for example, are continuing to be funded through the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. albeit now they're more focused on COVID-19, but viruses in general are being funded. Research on AIDS continues to be funded. So it really, it depends on what your research is and what you're really looking at. I would say contact us and we can give you some additional advice depending on the specificity of your research.
Okay, a follow-up question to that from another individual. How likely are new NIH proposals on COVID-19 research to be funded?
Well, you can see that NIH has already funded $290 million in funding, and this has been the last, pretty much, a lot of this has been the last 2 months.
Do you have an idea of whether or not a COVID-19 focused NIH application would be more competitive at this moment than an NIH application on another topic?
I would say the COVID-19 application would be more likely to get funded.
Okay.
More likely to get funded, and also more likely to advance, depending on the quality of the research.
Right. Next question. What broad funding opportunities, other than those presented today, are worth noting for social science faculty to look into related to COVID-19? So what social science opportunities have we not talked about today that faculty should know about?
Well, the sky's the limit, right? We haven't said anything about economics. Clearly, there's huge economic dislocation here. Social scientists, the social science activities at NSF are focused on anthropology, sociology, linguistics, behavioral sciences. So, the impact on the economy, very worthwhile pursuing at a time like this. The impact on inequality, for example. I mean, I mentioned the inequality programs within this Russell Sage Foundation and these nonprofits, but that also is an area ripe for support because of the exposure that this pandemic has exposed some of the fissures in our society with respect to inequality. So clearly that's an area of support. What other areas would I recommend? The sociology program has a very broad scope there. And you can look at a variety of different areas. So again, it really does depend on what your area of research is. NSF has already funded within 2 months $50 million, and it expects to probably double that within the next 2 months. I've been working with some faculty at Queens College that are looking at the pandemic, specifically looking at the demographics of the pandemic, looking at census data to see specifically how economic activity overlays with public health data, which overlays with economic data using ping data from cell phones, for example. So there are a lot of different opportunities here. That's an interesting one because what it does is it's trying to take real-time data. Of course, public health data is daily data from the state. Ping data is, you can get that data from cell phones, on a daily basis as well. And that, of course, opens up all kinds of interest on the part of a lot of federal agencies that are interested in understanding which areas have been the most affected by the economic crisis, which areas have been the most impacted. So anyway, give us a call, and I think that we can probably help you identify some of those opportunities.
Okay, next question. Often NIH and NSF grants require a statistician to be part of the grant and to help with writing the statistical plan of the grant. Does your office help with pairing researchers with statisticians, or at least help identify statisticians interested in collaborating?
Absolutely. Statistics are important, but evaluators are also important, and a lot of times the evaluators are statisticians too, people who are evaluating your research. So yeah, we will help you, pair you with statisticians. We will indicate to you when, help you identify whether you need one or not, and we will help find one for you if you don't have one.
Okay. Next question is, has NSF almost run out of its budget for COVID-19 related funding?
No, NSF has not run out, and there was a rumor that NSF has depleted its budget. And when I went back and looked at all of the funding, Congress allocated $95 million to NSF. And when I look at all the awards that NSF has made, it only amounts to about $50 million. So clearly there's $40 million that has not been awarded yet. There was a rumor out there by some faculty that said that NSF is no longer accepting rapid applications. Well, NSF has not shut down the rapid program. The rapid program has existed, will continue to exist. Now, after the end of the pandemic, rapid will continue to exist. So there isn't, and NSF program officers are continuing to fund COVID-19 related funding, COVID-19 projects. So feel free to develop one if you want to.
Okay. Here's another reply from our Vice Chancellor for Research, Tamara Schneider. She just responds to the question about expedited IRB review for COVID-19 projects. And she says that generally there is a focus on prioritizing externally funded work for IRBs. But there's no mention about whether or not that is more expedited for COVID-19 projects. The next question asks, does CUNY pay for or have an account for Grant Forward and Pivot? And I'm happy to take that and say, yes, we have full institutional accounts for every single CUNY campus for both Grant Forward and Pivot. All you need to do to log in for the first time, if you haven't done so before in either product, is to use whatever your campus email address is with cuny.edu. And you'll have full access to all of those resources and all of the funding discovery mechanisms there. And you can log in, of course you can't get to a campus computer, but you can log in at any point, anywhere you are in the world, as long as you use your cuny.edu address, your institutional address. You mentioned the deadline for the Russell Sage Foundation was extended. Is there someone at RF to provide guidance with respect to the foundation's grant application process?
Sure, give us a call.
Yeah, we can assist with the development of that proposal if you'd like additional assistance. And one of our extremely helpful grants officers who's listening right now would just like to let everyone know that grants offices do more than budgets, and we heartily agree. The next question, has the New York City Mayor's Office been engaged with the CUNY Apps Office regarding COVID research opportunities? CUNY has a program called Town and Gown, and that might be a direction to take these opportunities. John, any reaction to that? I don't
repeat the question?
Sure.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. The question says, has the New York City Mayor's Office been engaged with CUNY Apps Office regarding COVID research opportunities? CUNY has a program called Town and Gown, and that might be a direction to take these opportunities.
Well, the city of New York and the state of New York are in financial trouble, okay, at this point in time. And I think all of their resources are being devoted to COVID-19 emergency activities. You know, we've tried to, we recognize that even maintaining some of the ongoing research and sponsored projects that we have with them is going to be a challenge. So we're very weary about taking on any new initiatives with them until this whole the dust settles on this pandemic. So no, we haven't had much other than trying to the RF trying to protect the existing research activities from being defunded.
Okay. The next question is, are the slides for this presentation available on the RF website? And is there a link we can share broadly with our faculty and staff? And that's from a grants officer. And these slides are actually available in the handout section as part of your webinar resources that should be in a little control panel, potentially on the right of the screen. And you can access the slides there, but also we are going to be following up with grants officers to distribute the slides as well as the video link of this recording early next week. Let's see, the next question is, many of the COVID-19 proposals in NSF look similar. I assume this individual means the ones that we presented today as examples. I personally contacted 2 NSF directors, and they confirmed that many of the COVID-19 projects are similar. Is there any way that we can find out all the COVID-19 proposals that are funded by NSF?
Send us an email, and we'll send you a spreadsheet of the all COVID-19, all NSF proposals funded that include coronavirus or COVID-19 in the title. Okay.
And then the last question today, and thank you so much for the about 142 people who are still with us. The last question is there any platform where CUNY faculty members share their expertise so that multidisciplinary research / group proposals can be developed? And I will quickly say that one great way to see an index of expertise across the CUNY research universe is to actually look at Pivot or Grant Forward, because in those 2 products, users are encouraged to create profiles that list their publications and their research expertise. And so you can get a sense of other individuals who have the skills and the talent that you want to tap into to develop a group proposal or a multidisciplinary proposal by logging into Pivot and or Grant Forward and searching for the profiles that are part of the CUNY system. And John or Martin, I don't know if you have any other thoughts about that.
I agree completely.
Same. Thank you.
Okay.
So Dan, I just want to make out one other comment.
Please do.
With respect to that comment from one of the grants officers, that what I was trying to do is highlight the important work that grants officers do in developing budgets, but they also do very important work in developing a lot of proposals. There are thousands of proposals that go out every year, and sometimes, and in virtually all of those instances, those proposals are reviewed by grants officers first. So by all means, use the expertise of your grants officers to develop these proposals. We're here to provide additional support, but you know, we're a community of helpers here, helping faculty in research. So you know, I stand corrected in that I highlighted the important role they do in developing budgets, but there's so much more work that they do in in grant development, grantsmanship, and all of those other things that go along with having a successful research culture at CUNY.
I agree entirely, John. You know, we celebrate the grants officer community at CUNY. They are on the front lines of making the CUNY research enterprise what it is and making it successful. And we are the backstop, helping however we can. And so with that, I would like to wrap up this webinar. Thank you so much to my colleagues for assisting me in providing your expertise and your insights. Thank you especially to Martin Lee and the other staff of the CUNY Office of Research and the Technology Commercialization Office for putting this together with us. It was a fantastic opportunity. And thank you most of all to everyone who joined the webinar. We were so thrilled to have over 300 registrants and about 200 people tuning in at any given time. And so I hope that you can take the opportunity to join us again for future webinars that will be coming right around the corner. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.